latest US-Ukraine negotiations have entered a new phase. Washington is signaling that the stakes go far beyond simply stopping the fighting. In Moscow, nerves are clearly fraying. Urgent diplomatic maneuvers and unexpected meetings hint at growing uncertainty inside the Kremlin. On the battlefield, heavy clashes and sudden Ukrainian strikes are reshaping the tactical landscape. Explosions echo deep inside occupied territory and far beyond it across Russia itself. Across Europe, the mood has shifted. Plans once deemed unthinkable are now being drafted at the highest levels. Meanwhile, inside Russia, a new wave of mobilization pressure is sweeping the country, fueled by money manipulation and the regime's desperation to plug the growing gaps in its forces. And that's only part of the picture. Let's break down what's happening right now. Hello, this is Ukraine Today. Maria Farafonova here with the latest updates. In Miami, Florida, the meeting between Ukrainian and US delegations on a peaceful resolution to Russia's war against Ukraine has concluded. The key goal of the negotiations, according to both sides, is not only to stop the fighting, but also to create conditions under which Ukraine will never again face invasion. Marco Rubio called the session a productive continuation of the Geneva talks. He emphasized that Washington's task goes beyond simply ending the war.
We want to help Ukraine become permanently secure so that it never again faces another invasion. We want the Ukrainian people to emerge from this war not merely by rebuilding their country, but by making it stronger and more prosperous than it has ever been.
Rubio acknowledged that the process is complex and delicate. He also announced the next stage of diplomatic efforts. Special envoy Steve Witkoff will travel to Moscow later this week. The Kremlin has also confirmed this meeting, though without providing details.
There are a lot of moving parts here, and obviously there is another party involved that will have to be part of the equation.
Secretary of the National Security and Defense Council Rustem Umerov confirmed the success of the negotiations and thanked the US team for their work, mentioning the Secretary of State, Steve Witkoff, and Jared Kushner. He also added that there is still much work ahead.
We discussed all the important issues for Ukraine and the Ukrainian people, and the United States expressed exceptional support. Our goal is a prosperous and strong Ukraine.
Meanwhile, Ukrainian drones continue to strike deep into enemy territory. Explosions were reported on Russian soil as well as in the temporarily occupied part of the Donetsk region. According to reports circulating online, blasts were heard in temporarily occupied Debaltseve, Avdiivka, and a number of other settlements. Railway lines and rail hubs in the Donetsk region also came under attack. Explosions were also reported inside the territory of the aggressor state. In particular, UAVs attacked the Krasnodar region. Blasts occurred in the suburbs of Krasnodar and Anapa. Local residents say that at least 5 to 7 explosions were heard. According to them, the blasts were so powerful that the walls were shaking. Additionally, the SBU Sea Baby maritime drone struck 2 sanctioned oil tankers, Kairos and Virat, belonging to Russia's Shadow Fleet in the Black Sea. This was a joint operation conducted by the 13th Main Directorate of Military Counterintelligence of the Security Service together with the Ukrainian Navy. Following the strikes, both tankers sustained critical damage and were effectively put out of service. Russia is luring its citizens into the war. Russian cities are plastered with advertisements urging people to sign contracts with the Ministry of Defense. These ads are widespread across local social media groups as well, and on the streets of many cities, active manhunts for potential recruits continue.
They are grabbing everyone. There is an enormous amount of advertising everywhere. Signals are coming from all sides urging people to go fight, promising big money. At the same time, everyone knows that people die at the front. That is why recruitment ads often say they are not taking assault troops, but promise only rear area positions. This is how they lure people.
Money, as the military analyst noted, allows Putin to recruit quite a large number of people and so far maintained the Russian force grouping at roughly the same size it has a year ago. But the army is not growing. Meanwhile, Russia's revenues continue to decline. Economists predict that by the end of November there will be a significant drop in oil and gas income.
This affects not only the ability to produce drones, equipment, and missiles, but also the capacity to recruit new soldiers. After all, each one must be paid continuously.
At this very moment, critical developments are unfolding both along the front line and in the surrounding areas. Intense fighting continues, new Russian assaults are being reported, and Ukrainian forces are carrying out local counterstrikes and stabilization operations. Up next, the latest updates on shifts along the line of contact, enemy movements, the actions of Ukraine's strike assets, and the situation in frontline communities.
The Ukrainian armed forces have regained control of the situation in Huliapol. In the area of the settlement, more than 20 attempts to storm our positions have been repelled, and no new breakthrough has occurred. This is reported by the defense forces of southern Ukraine.
Today, a new defensive line has been established in Huliapol, and accordingly, the landscape of the area will be taken into account. Unfortunately, this is not the industrial Donbass. However, there are rivers and forest belts here, which make it possible to hold on to the positions we currently have.
As it became known, after the Russian advance in this direction, the command decided to redeploy part of the reserves to Huliapol. At the same time, Russia has already rushed to claim that its troops have entered the district center itself. However, this information has been refuted by our Center for Countering Disinformation. The rumors spread by Russian public channels about the occupation of the village of Vaisok have also not been confirmed.
They have only minimally approached our heavily fortified area and critical logistics center and are persistently trying to send separate small groups to the outer outskirts of Huliapol, attempting to probe our defenses. Once again, intense fighting is taking place. Our defenders there have apparently received some resources and reinforcements, and there is an ongoing struggle to stabilize the situation in this direction.
At the same time, analysts say that Pokrovsk remains the main focus of the enemy's efforts. Attacks are taking place around the clock, both in the city itself and on its outskirts, in hopes of encircling the Ukrainian forces.
The enemy currently maintains control over a substantial portion of the strategically important city of Pokrovsk, specifically dominating the southern and central districts. They are actively engaged in carrying out various aggressive actions, and simultaneously they are systematically attempting to gradually encircle the city, thereby tightening their oppressive ring around the nearby settlement of Mirnohrad.
However, in their endless assaults in the Pokrovsk direction, the Russians are suffering enormous losses. Our command does not hide the fact the main task of the armed forces of Ukraine today is to inflict maximum damage on the enemy's group, and the defense forces are handling this perfectly.
The losses are so great that they have to use reserves that in theory were not intended to enter Pokrovsk, that is, and even with operational reserves, Russia cannot gain the upper hand. Right now, on average, more than 200 enemy bodies are being laid per square kilometer. That is, including the killed and wounded, and that's an enormous number.
At the same time, in addition to defending, our military in Pokrovsk sometimes manage to advance as well. In particular, as reported from the ground, there are periodic sweeps of the enemy beyond the railway line, which now serves as a kind of dividing line in the city.
The defense forces are indeed succeeding in counterattacks, which are being carried out among other places near Pokrovsk. We're talking about Kupiansk, we're talking about almost all our locations where the Russians are trying to advance.
Speaking of Kupiansk, according to Putin himself, the city is surrounded and under Russian control. In reality, there is no encirclement at all, and there are fewer and fewer Russians in the settlement with each passing day.
Unfortunately, the enemy is still present in Kupiansk for now. It is quite possible that the defense forces will be able to improve their tactical positions. Today, I'm not saying that we will be able to completely drive out the enemy, although the current trend in Kupiansk shows that the defense forces, meter by meter, are managing to clear our Ukrainian land of the enemy.
And good news came yesterday from the occupied territories. In particular, details have emerged about the strike on Crimea. Thus, the General Staff reported that on the peninsula, the Panzer S-1 and Tor M2 air defense systems were attacked, after which drones managed to destroy a drone warehouse, including Orion and four-post UAVs, as well as strike a command post and a concentration of enemy personnel.
Local Z channels were in a panic, claiming that all sorts of devices were flying in, even Mavics. And Mavics have a range of 10 kilometers. Who launched them, and from where? Well, it's clear it wasn't the Ukrainian military. So who was it, and from where? So these are those very same naval drones whose involvement was once again confirmed by the Z channels, and which were apparently acting as mini aircraft carriers delivering Mavics, which then take off and destroy the target. In this sense, Mavics are actually the perfect tool. So if they manage to deliver them to the shore, from that point on, they're practically indestructible tools.
In essence, the defense forces have used a new tactic where one large drone delivers many smaller ones to the attack site. And considering that everything went successfully, it looks like there will soon be a lot more problems in the Russian rear.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine today. Join us now.
Russia is intensifying its hybrid warfare actions against NATO countries. As a result, Europe has now taken a step that would have seemed unusual just a few years ago. It is planning how to deliver a retaliatory strike. Germany has even developed a secret 1,200-page plan to prepare for the possible war with Russia, according to the Wall Street Journal, citing its sources. Here are the details. Watch.
Europe is preparing to respond to Russia's attacks. MEPs propose to defend themselves together, learn from Ukraine and tighten sanctions against Russia and Belarus. This is what they claim in Deutsche Welle.
You have to speak to Russia in its own language. Russia only understands the language of force. That's why Russia has excellent relations with Turkey, despite the fact that Turkey shot down its plane and didn't say it was a mistake. They apologized for what they did, but at the same time made it clear, we warned you.
A day later, Politico also reported that Europe is considering retaliatory measures against Russia.
As of now, I think it's still unfortunately too early to talk about any more serious response from Europe. Even though it's obvious that aggression against Europe from the Russian Federation has been going on for a long time, and Russian drones or drones that take off in Europe, most likely launched by people connected to the Russian Federation, are flying in. Europe, as a collective entity, is still not psychologically prepared or truly ready to resort to, let's say, the overt use of forceful military mechanisms of pressure and coercion. This reluctance is deeply ingrained.
According to journalist sources, the Kremlin's ideas for retaliation range from joint offensive cyber operations and faster, more coordinated identification of the sources of hybrid attacks to unexpected military exercises led by NATO. According to the Wall Street Journal's description, Germany's plan appears to be more concrete. The country has developed a secret plan to prepare for a possible war with Russia.
In Germany, they also considered, well, maybe sacrificing Ukraine and that's it. But in 2023, somewhere closer to the end of 2023, the German Council on Foreign Relations prepared a report that included the following phrase: in the event of Ukraine's defeat, a war between Germany and Russia is a prospect within 6 to 10 years. In other words, it's not that the war is cancelled. The war might be postponed, but over a longer period, it will still happen. Later on in Germany, they said that no, it won't be 6 to 10 years. The war could start in as little as a year.
In just over 2 years, the Germans created a document that provides for the deployment of up to 800,000 NATO troops, including units from Germany and the United States, to the eastern hypothetical front line. Sources from the Wall Street Journal claim that the plan details the logistical routes along which the troops are to be transferred.
Naturally, doing this on the territory of Ukraine is more acceptable than allowing it on their own soil. But what does it mean to do this on the territory of Ukraine? It means that Germany would send its troops to Ukraine to fight against Russia. So far, we have not seen any serious signals from our European partners indicating their readiness to send troops to Ukraine. But there is talk about it. Emmanuel Macron sometimes brings it up, but somehow this idea doesn't really find much support among the European Union partners.
By continuing its aggression, Russia must understand that in Ukraine it may face not only the armed forces of Ukraine, but also other military forces defending the sovereignty of their own countries.
Searches were conducted at the home of Andriy Yermak, head of the office of the President of Ukraine, immediately after his statements that Ukraine will not withdraw its troops from Donbass to appease Putin. Are these events connected? Is the White House trying to pressure Kyiv into making concessions to the Kremlin? More on this and other developments surrounding preparations for peace negotiations between Kyiv and Moscow ahead.
Scandals are no obstacle to negotiations. Kyiv is preparing for the next rounds.
There will be important negotiations next week, not only for our delegation but for me as well. And we are preparing solid ground for such negotiations. Ukraine will stand firmly on its feet. It will always stand. Thank you to everyone who helps us.
The preparations for further negotiations were marked by yet another extraordinary event. Anti-corruption agencies conducted searches at the home of Andriy Yermak, the head of the Ukrainian negotiation team.
Today, NABU and SAP are indeed carrying out procedural actions at my home. The investigators are facing no obstacles. They were given full access to the apartment with my lawyers present, who are cooperating with law enforcement. I am providing full cooperation from my side.
As a result of the searches, no charges have been brought. But already on Thursday evening, Yermak resigned. Meanwhile, the Kremlin received a modified peace plan from the US and Ukraine, changed during the negotiations in Geneva.
The US has handed over to Russia the parameters of the plan agreed with Kyiv in Geneva. Discussion of the document is scheduled for next week.
It is now absolutely clear to everyone, especially after the leak of those recordings of conversations between Dmitriev and Ushakov. The leaks regarding the so-called United States plan, the peace plan, show that it was a special operation by the Kremlin.
After the previous 28-point US plan was leaked to the press, causing a serious stir and a wave of criticism, the White House classified the latest version of the peace plan. And now even European diplomats do not know what is in the document.
This is an unprecedented situation from a diplomatic point of view. None of us have this information.
Meanwhile, Viktor Orban, Putin's Trojan horse in Europe, arrived in Moscow for a visit. At a meeting with the Hungarian Prime Minister, Putin tried to revive the idea of negotiations with Trump in Budapest.
That was Donald's proposal. And where did it come in then? He immediately said, "We have good relations with Hungary, you have good relations with Viktor, and so do I. So I'm suggesting this option. Of course, we would gladly agree. And if during our ongoing negotiations it truly comes to using the Budapest platform, I would be very happy about that as well."
So, in fact, Orban's visit, the Prime Minister of Hungary, is precisely about Moscow setting up the next trap. And all of this is happening in parallel with the supposed consideration of the United States peace plan, already revised in Geneva. No, we need to be very clear that they are not interested in this revised plan at all.
Moscow's goal is to pull the wool over Trump's eyes. Lies, manipulation, distortion of concepts, and simulated activity. Putin and his gang are doing everything possible to avoid taking real steps toward ending the war. But at the same time, not to spoil relations with Washington.
Now, we can already see that at this stage, Pest has once again started to appear on the agenda, and of course without Kyiv and without Brussels as a potential meeting place for Trump and Putin. And of course, Vladimir Putin, or rather the Russian leadership, will undoubtedly be pushing Donald Trump toward a kind of second significant Alaska. This is because, as they consistently and emphatically put it, these 28 crucial points were meticulously made, taking into full account the very spirit of Anchorage. Now, the Russians will certainly try to fully implement this particular spirit of Anchorage in any potential future meeting or diplomatic encounter.
The best evidence of the aggressors' absolutely non-peaceful intentions is the battlefield, where the occupiers are only increasing their activity and the intensity of their assault operations, continuing their offensive in Donbass and the Zaporizhzhia direction.
That's all for now. Stay with us to be the first to know what's happening right now. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the like button. See you soon.